Coming in hot, 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 Lisa shares her financial tips and strategies to build wealth, have fun with finances, and be debt-free without having a restrictive budget. From bankrupt to millionaire, Lisa knows what it's like to feel as if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Her unconventional money multiplier system is the very wealth protocol that enabled her to retire 2.5 years early, pay down $100,000 of debt in 6 months, and move to her dream home at the beach. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to rate the show, give us some love. We would love your review. And remember, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's what you do with it. And some words of advice: pay yourself first. Are you ready to partner with money? Go check out the money dating game at idatemoney.com and choose your partner. We hope you always get the date you want. Experts in the house. I'm your hostess, Lisa Drennan, your wealth activator, and I have a podcast, I Date Money, where we talk about financial tips and strategies to help you optimize the money that you currently have so you can 10x your profits. And today, we have these beautiful people in the house who are in the real estate industry. And I know a lot of you ask me questions about real estate, like, should I invest in this? Should I get Airbnb? Should I buy a renter's home? Should I buy a house, like, instead of paying rent? So these folks here can help you navigate some of these questions, but we're going to have a very specific conversation around things where we have asked the most common questions people have asked me about this. So we're going to go ahead and they're going to introduce themselves. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll try to get to them before the hour is up. And if we can't get to them live on the show, we'll come back and answer them afterwards. So welcome. We'll go ahead and start with you, Cindy. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're at and what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you if they need your expertise in real estate.
My name's Cindy Moriarty. I've been selling real estate full-time for 34 years. I also am a licensed associate broker for the past 17 years. I'm very involved in the Rochester Area Real Estate Association. I volunteer in several committees locally in Rochester and across the state. And currently I'm on the technology committee at the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors. I'm on the MLS committee and professional standards committee and the appraisal committee at New York State Association of Realtors. My general focus is on residential. I've sold a couple of investor type properties for renting and for flipping. However, I don't normally work with investors that buy several properties and for a portfolio. But I do have some basic do's and don'ts when it comes to buying investment properties, whether to rent or to flip.
Awesome. And we'll get into those details in a little bit. So what's the best way for people listening to connect with you?
Well, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, I think Cindy Moo. I just got onto Instagram. I think it's Cindy.Mooo. I like cows. That's why my nickname is Cindy Moo.
I love it.
I move people, or the experience is moving.
That's awesome.
Our webpage is mikeandcindyrealtors.com. My fiance is also our current president of the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors, and he's been in the business for 40 years, almost.
Awesome. And we'll put those links in the comments.
Another way to get a hold of me by email is cindymoriartyhomes@gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So anyone who wants to connect, check the comments if you're watching this live in the group, or if you're watching over on the YouTube, check the show notes. And if you have questions, Cindy is based out of Rochester, New York. So if you know anyone in that area, definitely you can refer her, connect with her, and ask her questions. So thank you. Bob, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us all about the things and where we can connect with you.
Okay, my name is Bob Thompson. I am based in Virginia. I am a longtime real estate agent and growth coach. I've worked with a ton of investors and REO and specialize in REO and short sales for probably the better part of the last 15 years. Obviously, do normal commercial, normal listings, but of course, most of my bread and butter is investors, REOs, which of course are bank-owned properties and things of that nature. You can reach me in terms of real estate at bobtheagent.com, and for coaching, speaking, or anything like that, whatbobthinks.com. And you can always, my number's right there. You can find me and give me a phone call. I'm old, so I still answer the phone. And obviously I'm on all of the Facebook, Instagram, all of the usual assorted spots. Don't look up Bob Thompson, because there's like 1,000 million Bob Thompsons. You will never find me.
Yes, that's funny. I like that. You're old. Okay, now age is the mind. I tell my clients that all the time. I have 65 to 75-year-old clients. They're like, well, I'm too old. I'm like, yeah, no, you're as old as you think you are. So how old do you think you are, Bob?
I still think I'm about 31, but 2 heart attacks later,
See,
my
there you
body
go.
tells me I'm 51. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. But we go with the mind. I like that better. Well, thank you. We're excited to hear all the things about the growth coach and the real estate. I know you're going to kind of combine and talk a lot about that. Um, Sue, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us all the things.
Yeah, I'm Susanna, Sue for short, Sue Sarvis. You can reach me at suesarviscoaching.com for super easy access. I am a broker. I actually am in brokerage leadership management. So I'm the president of Realty Associates in Houston, Texas. Well, Houston and Texas in general. We have 6 offices across the state, and we have 1,200 agents with us. And we do both residential and commercial. I think my sweet spot for consumers who are on this call is really matchmaking. If you're looking for a home or starting the home search but haven't found a real estate professional that you really connect with, you can reach out to me on suesarviscoaching.com, and I'm happy to marry the two and help you find a match after I speak with you. That's something that I do for consumers and find a good fit for them. Lisa and I met because I'm starting a real estate related podcast called She Leads Real Estate for women leaders in the real estate space. It launches September 1st. And if you would like to be notified of that release, you can go to Sue Sarvis Coaching, and at the bottom, you can enter your email. So thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and I'm excited about your podcast. It's coming up. It's only in a couple of weeks. So that's awesome.
I know. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. And let's see, Lima, how are you? Can you hear
I'm
us
good.
okay?
Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a very cool background you got. I love it.
Yeah, it's because I'm on my iPad, so please forgive me. I wasted tea in my laptop, so I was like, oh no, let me get my iPad out. I didn't know how to
Oh
switch
no.
so I have to go get another
Well, hopefully,
laptop today. So and
yeah,
also
hopefully that'll
forgive
work.
me because my tooth, I just had a root canal in the front of my mouth. So I'm talking funny, my lip is swollen. I just came back from the spa, so I'm like trying to relax a little bit. So, but I'm glad to be here. So,
Yeah, well, we're glad you can make it with all that going on. Diligence. I love it. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell us all the things that you do and how people can connect with you.
yeah, my name is Lima McLean, and I'm a real estate investor. I buy and sell properties all over the United States, Canada. I've been doing that since 2004. I have a mentorship program where I teach business owners, professionals, 9-to-5 workers, doctors, realtors, how to buy real estate using no money, no credit, and no mortgage. I've been doing that for a long time. I have just started my online journey about 1.5 years ago. I brought my session online, and so it's really doing well. I have students from all over the globe taking my sessions because these strategies work everywhere. I just started a speakers platform Well, I guess I wouldn't say I just started the speakers platform. I was doing more events offline, in-person events, real estate investing, business development, all of that over the years. And then when I started online, I started doing more virtual events. So now I have a real estate platform, and now it's global. So I work with speakers from all over the globe, helping them to hit stages from all, everywhere. Podcasts, events, whether it's conferences, summits, workshops, master classes, whatever. I help them to organize events so that they can hit 5 and 6 figure months, getting high ticket clients, helping them to get paid speaking opportunities all over the United States. Even some of them are traveling from other countries to come here to speak, to get paid opportunities and to get that visibility. So I just started a speakers group about 2 months ago. So, and it's growing, and there's going to be a lot of stuff happening and taking place, this next year, with the speaking opportunities. So please join that group. Also, I have a new book collaboration project that I'm working on. It's a rebirth best-selling book. I'm having about 15 authors in that book, and they're telling their story of unyielding courage, and this to really just like promote a healing around the globe, and to really give hope to everyone that no matter what your situation is, you can still have the life that you want. Doesn't matter what you go through. So that's why we're doing that. And that book itself we're going to have a huge event. Then we're going to have a book tour virtually, and then we're having an in-person book tour as well. So, and this is authors from all over the globe. They're going to be traveling here for the book tour as well. So that's what I'm working on now. So there are
a lot going on there.
Yeah. I have a virtual assistant.
In your group,
that's the only way I can do it.
Called Elite Speakers.
Yeah, Elite Speaker Society. So if you join that group,
I'll go ahead and put that in the comments.
Yeah. There's a chat.
So if you guys are looking for speaking engagements and you want to connect with, that platform, virtual, on stage, you want to do collaborations, definitely join that group. It's a fast growing group. I'm in there, and there's plenty of opportunities that are coming through all the time. So I know a lot of you out there want to spend time investing in speaking engagements. And this is a great way to utilize other people's audience to share your expertise and to get referrals, which we all love. So thank you. Check the comments for links to connect with all of these beautiful experts in the real estate realm. So we're going to get started with our first question. So whoever wants to answer, just go ahead and start talking, and you guys can piggyback off of each other, and we'll kind of do this little roundtable format. So who would like to start off the conversation discussing the financial benefits and potential risk of investing in rental properties?
I will start on that.
All righty. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, so the fact of the matter is there are potential risks there, and I think everybody overlooks that or tries to downplay that. And those are facts. Tenants are going to be tenants, and I used to own rental properties. As a matter of fact, rental property is what got me into real estate, because I found that I loved the hunt way more than I loved owning rental property. And I put that based on two statements. Number one, I tried to be cheap about it and handle those rental properties myself. In other words, I did not have a separate landlord. That was mistake number one. Mistake number two was I did not have enough capital on hand if, God forbid, the proverbial hit the fan. So at one point I had 4 rental properties. I had issues with several of them, and I eventually unloaded them to another investor that was way more knowledgeable than I was at the time and had the capital to back that up, because if you don't, you'll start robbing Peter to pay Paul very quickly. That being said, years later, I am in a much better spot to where if I was to purchase rental property, which is not really something I'm planning on doing, if I was to do that, then I would get a proper person to take care of those properties, and I would have my money set aside in case, God forbid, something went wrong. So there is definitely money to be made. It's typically going to be long-term growth because let's be honest, that's where the money is on a rental property. You're not on a monthly rental, we'll call it. So in other words, somebody that has a year lease on the property, you're not making money off the month to month. You're making money off this thing is making it's growing in equity, and your mortgage is getting paid for by the tenant. And that is a great thing. I think short-term thinking with a lot of individuals is that they buy a rental property and then they immediately start jacking up the rent. My attitude is a better tenant is worth its weight in gold. So you may not be making as much on the front end that you could be, but if you've got somebody in there that's there year after year and is consistent, to me, that is gold right there. That's what you want. It's when you boot out that nice tenant because they're overpaying, or they finally convince themselves that they can buy a home, and you let the next guy in and they tear it up. It's a mistake all the way around. So there's plenty of money to be made, but be careful. And quite honestly, if you get a good tenant, treat them like gold, and I think they'll return the favor. I'm going to shut up now.
I love that answer, and thank you for that, because a lot of people think, I have a lot of clients who buy rental properties. They'll buy a duplex, live in one half, and then rent the other half, and then they'll move out, and they'll have this rental property, and they have tenants that they can become friends with, and it's like the rent is so low, and then they change the locks on them. I'm like, what? And they're like, well, what do I do? I'm like, contact an expert in your area and figure out, and I have a cousin who actually buys a lot of houses, rental properties in the Rochester, New York area. And there's certain parts of the city he won't even touch because of the rules for tenant landlords. So definitely, I love those tips. Anyone else would like to?
And that one more thing that goes to your point is that what happens, and I'm guilty of that, when I own the 4 rental properties, my ego got the best of me. So then I'm walking around, hey, I own rental property. I'm special and all of that. So if you want to do that, that's great, but know what you're doing, know what you're talking about. You're not playing a part because it's going to cost you. And sometimes newbie investors, their ego gets in the way and they will buy anything to simply say that they have a property. And that's just not going to work long term. So you've just got to make sure that you're prepared. Find a good local agent that knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, I definitely back everything you said, Bob, with investment properties about having a good tenant, valuing them, and not jacking up the rents right away, and having the capital to cover just in case. I used to do mortgage financing many, many, many years ago. I haven't originated a loan in well over 20 years because now you have to be licensed in order to do it. But I do know that financing for buyers, when they buy a multifamily, even if they're going to live in part of it, the bank requires that they show so many months in reserves, besides the closing costs and the down payment covered, making sure that they have capital right out of the gate.
Yeah, good point.
And and another point, Bob, you made, having a good property manager, especially if you own several rental properties, that is key.
Yeah.
And knowing the market of where you're buying that rental property. And Lisa, you hit the nail on the head about your cousin buying rental properties and not going into certain areas because the resale isn't good.
Yeah, and I actually, back in the day when I was a real estate paralegal, I saw a lot of deals fall through where people would buy up all these properties. Oh, it's an up and coming neighborhood. It's like, yeah, no, it's going down for a reason.
Yeah.
Businesses were pulling out. It's like you don't want to buy there.
You also have to analyze the market of where you're buying the rental property because I know in our Rochester area, it's important in Rochester, New York, to have off-street parking. Off-street parking is more valuable to have, especially on a resale, than it is not to have it, because of the rules and regs of parking, especially in the wintertime when the plows have to get through. Where are you going to put your car?
Yeah, that's a
Garage
good
isn't as
point.
important, but that off-street parking availability is more important on a resale.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially if you're like owning properties in the city, where a lot of people are walking and or want to be within walking distance. I had a client that could never get a parking spot and would walk 5 to 6 blocks at like midnight to get home. I'm like, in the middle of winter. No,
Yeah,
thank you.
not fun.
Location. Go ahead, Sue. What would you like to add?
Oh, I was going to add, and we talked about this when we recorded your podcast, Lisa. One of the benefits and then a risk. One of the benefits is diversification. So, you max out your 401k if you have one, your IRA if you have one, and then what, right? And so this is part of a great portfolio, and it's important to diversify. So real estate investing fits in there perfectly, whether it's residential or commercial. One of the risks, like Bob and Cindy have already kind of talked about, having cash reserves, yes, but also investigating, umbrella insurance because things happen. And for example, I know someone that owned a rental property, had a brand new kitchen put in. Well, the contractor did not secure the upper kitchen cabinets to the wall correctly. And the first time the tenant went to go put a cup in the cupboard, the entire wall cabinet fell onto her and she was injured. And so she sued not only the contractor, but the landlord who I knew personally. So definitely investigating, worth having a conversation about is, do you need umbrella insurance? So I wanted to add that.
I remember that conversation and I visualize that that's a horrible accident to happen. But yeah, having the proper insurance in place is so important, especially if you're going to be investing in properties to gain that return, because the loss, I've seen a couple people get sued from workers getting hurt on their properties. And, it's so important to make sure you talk to the experts about that. Anyone else would like to add anything in addition to that question? Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, I would like to add to, as far as rentals and like the return on the investment, I do have a couple of rentals, but I stopped doing it a long time ago because the return was just not that good for me. Like the cash flow was like really low. So now what I do is a lot of short-term rentals, and mid-term rentals. And so like with short-term and mid-term rentals, literally you're like 10 times, what you were cash flowing with like the rental properties. So that's what I do now. And it works really well, even if the property is not, even if the vacancy rate is like, 65, 70%, you're still like cash flowing, like, so it's, huge profit. So that's why I stopped. I had so much trouble with tenants and it was just a headache, going out there, for problems and having someone try to burn the house down, going to eviction court. So now all that stuff is gone. So yeah, that's what I have to say. I have, like you said, some good tenants and that's who I keep, but I make much more with the short-term and mid-term rentals.
And Lima's not wrong, and I kind of forgot about it, but my neighbor actually does that type of thing to where he's been doing it for over 10 years. So he's in contact with all the insurance companies. So let's say somebody, has a fire at their house and they've got to be out of the house for 5-6 months while they're doing the rehab. Those are the type of people that he rents to. The insurance companies call him and then they use his property for 5 or 6 months and then somebody else comes in. So he seems to stay consistent in that regard to where, again, obviously I'm sure it didn't happen overnight, but he had reached out to all of the local insurance people in the area, State Farm, Nationwide, all of that. So they now know on that Rolodex of, hey, it's 3 a.m. One of my clients' house caught on fire. Instead of them being put into a hotel or an apartment for 6 months, we've got a real, normal residential property for them to rent. And he seems to do quite well. And I don't imagine he's going to change that up anytime soon. So that's certainly an option too, that I don't think, myself included, probably thought about at the time or even now until Lima brought it up again, that made me think about it. So yeah, something to look into.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Lima, definitely a good thing.
I love that.
We
Thank
need
you.
more of that.
All right. So one of the questions I get asked a lot from my clients is, a lot of them carry debt. And, there's the home equity loan option, refinancing your mortgage to use that money to pay off debt. So what are the financial implications of refinancing a mortgage, and when might this be a good option for homeowners, especially if they're looking to pay off debt? Who would like to go first?
I would say if you can avoid, it's good in the sense because if you're refinancing for the sake of paying off credit cards or any type of debt that has a high interest rate, especially if it's higher than your mortgage amount, yeah, do it. And don't incur any more debt or cut up your credit cards if you want to do it that way. A good way to refinance just to build equity in your house, and I could speak from personal experience, is to refinance if you have a 30-year mortgage to start out with, to refinance term-wise down to a 15-year, because you build equity super quick. So I highly advise that, or even if you refi to a 20-year, that's a good option to do. And it's amazing how quickly you build up the equity. Even if you roll over your credit card debt or car payment or what have you, it's still a good thing to do as long as you don't over borrow too much, and the house still has to appraise for what you borrow. Of course, on a refi. Another good thing is on a 30-year mortgage, and we usually advise our first-time home buyers, even making one extra payment a year, especially if you have an FHA mortgage where you start out with not much equity because you have a minimal down payment. Making one extra payment a year cuts it down to like 23 years.
No, that's a good
Good
point.
point, Lisa. I was going to add in there that, anyone that you call, if you're a consumer, anyone that you call for refinance rates and to talk to, it's their job to sell it to you, right? They may or may not go over the math with you. So I want to give everyone this formula that I shared with Lisa you want to determine what's the break-even point of this refinance. When is it worth it for you financially? How long will it take for what you're spending on closing costs for this refinance for you to not only recoup that, but then start really saving if you refinance and, are saving money? Maybe the interest rates have gone down and whatnot. So to calculate that break-even point on your refinance, you're going to divide your closing costs that are going to be incurred by the amount that you'll save each month. And once you have that number, that's the number of months it will take you to reach that break-even point. And then from there, going forward, you're saving that amount monthly. So I just want to put that out there because as mortgage lenders, it's their job to sell these things to you. If you call them up, they're going to give you all the benefits and reasons why. But I want to make sure that you also have in your back pocket, what's best for you. And part of that is knowing, when is this really advantageous for me financially? How many months will it take for me to really feel that financial benefit? No matter the reason, whatever the reason, I just want you to be sure you have that formula.
Yeah,
I would definitely
thank you
agree
for
with that completely. I think the other thing is to make sure that you've corrected your bad habits along the way. Why are you in a position where you have to pay this debt off? I have dealt with folks on the foreclosure side where they refinanced themselves out of a house they lived in for 30 years because they constantly built up debt. They would refinance, constantly build up debt, go on trips, do all of those things, and called me 3 days before the house was to go to foreclosure. And at that point, there was nothing we could do. 30 years of memories down the drain, family home gone. Yes, you went on trips. Yes, you did all of that. Yes, you have nice cars. Now you have absolutely nothing to show for it. So make sure you've got that under control. Now it could be medical debt, and obviously I've been there, so I understand the medical debt situation. But if you really do what I like to call that self-check and really look at where your debt is coming from, figure out how to control that first and create good habits, then you can take Sue's method and go in and go, okay, this makes sense because we are not going to end up in the same situation 5 years from now. And the other thing I would say is that there are millions of people in this world that have gone into bankruptcy and then came out of it smelling like a rose and never made those mistakes again. So don't feel like if you've got a blemish in your past, it's the, oh my God, I can never be responsible with money ever again, because that's not the case. And there are millions and tons of rich people and famous people that have, had to declare bankruptcy at least once, some of them even twice, because it's just the way it goes. Sometimes you take opportunities and sometimes you swing and miss. But correct those behaviors that cause that debt first. And then from that point, then you can move forward.
Excellent point. And, as the Wealth Activator, we have the Crush on Debt membership where we focus on rewiring the thought process that creates the debt, because a lot of times it has nothing to do with poor financial planning. It has to do with that emotional connection of, why do I need this right now? And when everybody wants the easy way out because they incur so much debt. A lot of my clients I work with have, $70,000 to $100,000 worth of debt, and they want a quick fix. And you see all those commercials for the debt relief, for the home equity. You could do this, reverse mortgages. And I'm like, no, what is the long-term plan here? And if you're just going to transfer your debt and never think about how we're going to treat our debt like cash and change our relationship with it, you're just going to end up in the same cycle. So thank you for pointing that out. I just want to make a note. I know, Bob, we talked about this on the podcast when we did our show. I'm an independent insurance broker. I retired from the Social Security Administration. You do not need to have medical debt. You don't need to go bankrupt for medical. If you have medical questions about repayments, the hospital doctors, they have financial plans that are 0% interest, and you can make arrangements to pay that back. You can get financial aid. So just know that there is possibility. If you have questions, please connect with me. Send me a direct message. I'll be happy to answer all of them and direct you to who you need to contact to help you with that. But just know that if it's medically related, you don't need to put that on a credit card. You don't need to refinance your home. There are so many different options out there. So anybody else want to add to the conversation?
Yes, I would like to say something too. Yeah, I know what it's like, to have like debt and all that, and to be broke and all that. And I know what it's like to not have debt, not to be broke. And so with this refinancing, what I do now and what I've been doing for years is, with everything, I create the income for whatever it is I want. So if I'm going to do a refinance on a property and pull cash out, whether it's my primary residence or an investment, I create the cash to make that, and that payment, or, whatever it is. Like if my children want a car, like I create the cash. Like if I want a new car, whatever, I create that income for it. So that's what I like to advise individuals. And like Cindy said, what I do too, when I'm doing a refinance, I do roll over like a car, a boat, or whatever it is into that refinance. So it's paid off. So I don't have like car payments and this and that, but then I do create the income to cover whatever that payment is going to be as well. So I highly advise that too. A lot of people go in backwards, getting into debt, but instead you should create money, or, the avenue, so that you can cover all of your expenses. And that's what I do with my students. I help them to build portfolios, to create cash flow that's going to yield the revenue to cover all their household expenses. So whether or not they're working or not, they're still covered, so that's what I like to do. So I love that, what you were talking about.
Thank you for adding that. I appreciate that. So yeah, if you guys are looking for help with that, definitely connect with Lima and check that out and find out what it's all about. It might be a good fit for you, might not, right? So our next question, how do market conditions and interest rates impact the affordability of buying real estate? And what strategies can buyers use to navigate these fluctuations? And I know there's a big buzzword right now, as of this recording, about rates going down. So who wants to go first on this question?
I'm going to jump in then.
All right.
And that's the thing. Every market is different. So I am the Hampton Roads, Virginia market, which for people that don't know would be like Norfolk, Virginia, Virginia Beach, Virginia, the bigger cities in the surrounding area. Rates are not an issue for us at all. It's inventory. It doesn't exist. You figure for years we had a large amount of foreclosure business that was always floating around. I myself, again, worked with a lot of that, and all of that dried up and disappeared. So there's simply put, inventory doesn't exist, which leads to higher price points along the way. It's just what it is. And my solution to that is if somebody is, let's say, approved for 300,000, which is essentially a starter home in my area, we may actually look further down that price point, even at 225. Maybe we can find something that needs a little bit of work, but we have more power, more pull, because I can go to the 250 seller and say, hey, look, we're approved for more than this, which means we're a stronger buyer at 250 as opposed to at 300,000. Let's be honest, we're a weak buyer because we're going to be dealing with folks that are approved at 325 and 350 and things of that nature. They're just going to have more bang for their buck than we are. So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, and I get static for this, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes it's not always the right time to buy. We, as real estate agents, we have been spoon-fed and taught from day one, it's always a good time to buy. It's always a good time to buy. You've got to be mentally in a position to where you're ready to buy. And if you're not ready, that's okay. I went through a divorce several years ago and could have easily bought the property that I was living in. But quite honestly, I wasn't in a position emotionally where I wanted to deal with that, and I passed on it. Now, could it have been a good financial opportunity? Certainly, but I wasn't in the right headspace to do all of that, and I am okay with that. And I think a lot of people purchase before they're ready, or because it's the quote unquote next thing to do, like anything else in this world. Okay, I'm engaged. Now I'm going to get married. Now I'm going to have babies. Now I got to buy a house. Even the first house that I bought, we had custody of my wife's younger brothers, and they were already 16. A year and a half later, they graduated from high school. If I had been smart, I wouldn't have bought the house that we bought because it was built for, we bought it because it was a good high school for the kids. What I could have done is stayed in the rental that we were in, waited until the boys moved out, or, at least were graduated from school. And then my ex-wife and I could have bought anything we wanted. But we didn't, I just didn't plan ahead and think about it that way. So yes, I mean, obviously owning a home is important without a doubt, but it also has to be for the right reasons. And you're not just going to do it because, everybody else around me is. So there's always that aspect of it too. I think it makes for a better buying process and a better decision-making when it happens. Most of us will only own 4 or 5 houses in their entire life that they're going to live in. So it has to be a right and proper decision.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Bob. Our Rochester, New York market is notoriously low on inventory. It's been crazy for the past 4 years since COVID. Absolutely crazy. I feel there's more buyers than there are houses available on the market. And the increase in the interest rates that happened 2 years ago, enhanced or made the lack of inventory so much worse, because the sellers are saying, I could sell my house for more money, a lot more money than what I paid for it a few years before. But where am I going to go with a higher interest rate when they have their current interest rate between 3% and 4%? And then they're going to have to be paying 7% plus a higher price for the house that suits them. So it's one of the reasons why I liken it to, I call it musical chairs. Instead, it's musical houses, where there's two houses in the middle and a bunch of buyers dancing around in a circle. And when the music stops, who's going to get into the house? And the best thing you can do is, I agree with Bob with the buyers. The buyers need to be prepped well in advance. They have to have their financing in order, and they have to give their best possible shot and what it's worth to them. And also motive behind buying a house. Don't just, like Bob said, don't just go out and buy a house because it's the in thing to do. You have to think about your long-term goals. Why are you buying? I want to say back in 2010, there was a tax incentive where the first time home buyers got up to $8,000 in tax credits. But they had to have an accepted offer by a certain date, and they had to close 2 months later by a certain date in order to get this tax credit. And I had buyers saying, we got to buy, we got to buy, we got to buy. And in a month, I sold 4 houses to first time home buyers with this tax credit. And 3 out of 4 of them went to resell their homes in like within the past 5 years afterwards. And they wound up not doing very well on the resale. And I told them that I didn't think it was the right home for them. And I pointed out the reasons why. And they didn't listen to me, and they went ahead and bought the house anyway. I said, we could still look. We have time. We can still look. And they said no. And they wound up barely breaking even on the resale.
Yeah, I think that's very true. What y'all both said about checking motives at the door for sure, making sure that you're buying for the right reason, that you're ready to buy and take on the financial responsibility at whatever phase in life you're in, post-divorce, 20s, whatever it is. But if you are ready, what I tell consumers is, and my agents, what did they say? Date the rate, marry the house. If you find a house that you love and it checks all the boxes, you can always refinance later within reason. Like, be responsible. Like, your payment should be between this and this % of your pay. You should feel comfortable. You should be able to breathe. But if you are, go for it, because you can refinance later. And that same house a year from now, depending on your market and what the trends have been in your market, may be more expensive by a lot more if you wait a year or two. If you wait for, I'm going to wait for rates to come down, and I'm going to wait for them to come down a lot, that same house, yeah, the rates may come down, but that same house may be $100,000 more in 2 years. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. But something to keep in mind, if you are ready, don't, play chicken with the rate. You can refinance later. You can recast potentially, depending on your loan. So those are things to think about, and really checking the charts and really doing the math and checking your wish list and seeing if there's anything that needs to be added onto the house later on, rather than looking for a home with a pergola or outdoor patio. Maybe you can put one in and it's a lesser sales price. So those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, great things to point out. Thank you. All righty.
I would like to say one thing too. What I do recommend too, when individuals are buying properties, whether it's a primary residence or investment, a lot of like realtors, brokers, they always take the person out. You get pre-qualified for a certain amount, and they let the individual know, okay, this is what you're pre-qualified for, or pre-approved for. Let me say pre-approved. Okay, so then they take them out, and that's what they're looking for. They're pre-approved for $500,000. To me, it's not always a good idea to, even if you're approved for $500,000, maybe you can get a property that's valued at $500,000, but maybe you put an offer in for $300,000. $350,000. So we're walking into equity. A lot of people, they buy at market. They're looking at the house. This is the perfect house. This is the emotional, just like what Bob was talking about earlier, all emotions and all that. I try to let people know to get into something where you're walking in, where you have like some type of foundation paved out for yourself. So when you're walking in there, you're not walking into like, a really horrible situation. And I'm only talking about this from personal experience. I've been there, broke, busted, disgusted, all of that. So I know what it's like. So I try to, encourage others to try to do, things differently. And I definitely do things differently now. So yeah, definitely. That's what I wanted to say.
And Lima makes a good point, and I think we skip this a lot, or a lot of people skip this. You have a right to interview your real estate agent and, ask those questions and talk to, most of my business, obviously at this point, is personal referrals and sphere of influence. So that's what you're ultimately looking for. Hey guys, who did you use? You don't want the agent that's just going to be like, oh, you're approved for 500. Well, these are houses between 450 and 500. Oh, you like that one? Okay, great. Let's write the contract. No, you want the agent that's going to go in and go, okay, well, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is what we can do to fix it. This is not an issue. This is a 3-bedroom with 1 bath. And for 10 grand more, we can get the 3-bedroom with 2 bath, because that's going to have better resale factor and it's not really going to affect our mortgage payments. Hey, instead of getting 10 grand off the price point, let's use that 10 grand to pay down a point or use for closing costs or something like that. And sometimes when it's low inventory, you have to be honest with your client and say, the win is getting the house. Yes, you didn't get any discount at all. But guess what? You still got the property. This is the one that you wanted. And that's the victory. Do you want to save $1,000 or do you want to lose the house? Because sometimes it can come down to that. And that's where I think, in general, a lot of people, at least the horror stories that I've heard on the backside of it, when I've picked up new clients or I've sold a property that somebody else originally worked with somebody else on, they didn't vet their real estate agent. They didn't have those conversations. I mean, I know I didn't. I mean, I bought my first house before I was a real estate agent, and it was a complete and teetotal nightmare. And the lady still in the industry to this day didn't tell me anything. The house was on the market for 84 days. We got no discounts. I literally got a white power guy living behind me with the big old flags and everything else in the yard and a meth head next to me. No discussion of home inspection, no discussion of anything. And personally, I didn't look into her. I literally, tells you how old I am, pulled out the yellow pages and said, blip, I'm going to call this lady. And then we looked at 2 houses. I walked in the second one. We've got twin teenage boys. I said, okay, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths. We're done. That was the extent of my research that I did. And I wish my father or somebody that I listened to would have grabbed me around the neck and said, what are you doing, dummy? Because we do unfortunately have a bad habit of not vetting our real estate agent or being afraid to ask those hard questions. What is your experience? How long have you been in the industry? What happens if this happens? If they can't answer you or they're stumbling and fumbling, you're going the wrong direction. Find somebody else. It's your money. At the end of the day, I get paid to work for you, period. That's how I make my money. And if I can't answer your questions, then I probably am the wrong fit for you, or I may not know what I'm doing, one or the other.
Well said, Bob. I have a lot to add to that. As far as I know, all of you all know about the NAR settlement changes that took effect this past weekend, that all buyers have to be under buyer's contract to a real estate agent before they tour homes. I personally have been using buyer's contracts for over 20 years. The reason why, even though we didn't have to back then, I worked for 11 out of my 34 years as a buyer's agent on 2 different teams long ago. I've been on my own as an individual listing and selling agent for the past 10 years. But back in the day when I was a buyer's agent, I have a buyer's consultation appointment where I have flow charts of when we go out and look at houses, making sure they're pre-qualified or pre-approved for a mortgage with a reputable lender. They have a flow chart and a time frame of when everything happens, from the day we look at the house, from writing up the offer, to doing a home inspection or not, and mortgage financing, making sure they ordered the appraisal, they finished the application process, down to mortgage commitment, what to do after you get the mortgage commitment before the closing, and then getting to the closing table, doing the final walkthrough within 2 calendar days of the scheduled closing. So it's a lengthy appointment, it's at least 1.5 hours, but at least it explains to the buyer how we get paid. And this is part of what what made us get to the NAR settlement was the lack of transparency. So most buyers that I signed under contract, they understand most of the time then I was getting paid through the multiple listing system. But if in case we find a for sale by owner and the seller isn't willing to compensate me, I may ask you, the buyer, to compensate me. And if you're able to compensate me, commissions have always been negotiable, but this is what we need to stress. I've always stressed, this is what I charge, but yes, the commissions are always negotiable. If I provide less services, if it's a private sale, yes, I charge less money for that. Why? Because I'm not doing as much work as I normally would do. So I believe in buyer preparation. Even if that buyer goes and meets with a mortgage lender and they have some credit issues they have to work out, and it takes about 4 months for their credit to be up to par and get rid of the bad credit or pay off the collection items or what have you. At least by the time they're ready, they get their credit up to speed where they're really, really ready to buy. The rest of it is smooth sailing. They got their homework done. And then I always say, I look out for the buyer and I make sure that they're buying the right house. And I look at resale value in the long run. I ask the buyer, how long do you intend to be here? Okay. And most of them will say, at least 5 to 7 years, perhaps a little bit longer. But I always say, I look at resale value and I point certain things out that may affect about the house that may affect the resale value. I want them to be aware of certain things because I say, I hope you like me. Because, when you call me in a few years asking me to relist your home, I want to be able to sell it. So I'm looking and making sure that they profit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I see a lot of commercials for real estate, and I've seen a lot of reels on TikTok and Instagram about the new commission thing and how is that going to play out for everyone, that is in that business. And it's an interesting conversation, but it is so important to connect with a agent or a broker, whoever in the industry that you trust. And I know we moved to Florida 2 years ago and there was all kinds of realtors. Oh, let me help you. And I'm like, I'll talk to them, interview them. And I know Cindy, I've known Cindy for over 30 years now. And she's, I've sold 3 houses through her. And I mean, and I have tons of friends that, being in the business myself way back when, that are doing real estate. And it's just like, no, I want somebody who's on top of the ball, who knows exactly what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. And I don't want any, BS to go through, and because it's stressful enough. Like, it's a life-changing event to buy a house, to sell a house, to invest in real estate. I mean, I've invested in some real estate, and it's like my hair turned gray. I hide it really well, and it's just like you have to have a certain character to be a landlord, to run an Airbnb, to put up with that stuff, because we talked earlier about the poor tenants. And my husband and I are so anal about, keeping things nice. I could never, I would flip out on someone if they destroyed a house that they were renting. It would just drive me crazy. And we've rented a lot of Airbnbs and, places at the beach. And some of these landlords, it's like, the place is filled of bed bugs. The furniture is disgusting. Like, the property manager doesn't even take care of the property. And we're vacationing and we paid X amount of dollars. And I'm like, this is trash. Like, how are you making any money off of this business if I'm coming in here and giving you a bad review? Like, why wouldn't you want to cater to me? So there's so many different things that we need to pay attention to. And I really appreciate you all coming together and sharing your expertise and all the gold that you provided for our listeners. We did have some questions, but you guys answered them really nicely. You must have predicted yourself what they were going to ask you. So I don't see any additional questions. This will be going live up on the YouTube. We'll get you the links and all that. So those of you in the group watching, send a direct message, connect with whoever you need to through Instagram, Facebook, wherever you need to connect and ask those questions. And do interview at least three real estate people to help you reach your goals and see, like, is this a good fit? And know the good questions to ask to figure out, because remember, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it's what you do with it.